me, you wouldn't exist. Because creation does not make mistakes. Thus, if you exist, you belong. There is a reason why creation is not complete without you. Stop arguing with creation. Take it at its word. If you exist, you deserve to exist. And if you deserve to exist, you deserve to be who you are as fully as you possibly can. This is just simple logic. We ask you now, in what way may we be of service to you? You may begin your dialogues and questions, if you wish.
Am I the only one in this room?
You're the only one in your room. Everyone else is creating their own rooms, and they're the only one in their room. But you're all co-creating the idea of being in a room together, and so you are all harmonizing your individual rooms in your own realities. You're eternal, you're infinite, you exist, and that can't change. And that's the core, that's the stillness, that's the ultimate unconditional peace and balance you feel.
Pain and suffering.
Fun, aren't they?
Certainly help me to learn.
All right, well, sometimes on your planet, many of you find that because of the way you've been brought up, it's sometimes easier to go through an experience of something you're not, because it makes it that much easier to understand what it is you are. Now, pain is the result of resistance to the natural self.
So that was Bashar. And before you get any ideas in your head about what Bashar is, I think that it's probably best to meet the man behind Bashar. His name is Darryl Anka, and here he is. Darryl, thank you for coming out today to the studio.
My pleasure.
It's a pleasure to have you here.
Thank you, Lance.
I have been watching some of your stuff, and I've seen you online, and we had the pleasure of meeting at the Conscious Life Expo in LA, and I was fascinated by what you do. And why don't you tell me a little bit about how it is that you came to be a channel, and for the audience at home, what is a channel in your definition?
Channeling, to me, is a natural state. We all have the ability to do it, and we actually do all do it from time to time in our lives. It's sort of just getting out of your own way, opening up to the greater or bigger being that you are, the bigger picture of yourself, of your consciousness. And it's anything that you do that you love to do when you're in that state, you don't notice the passage of time, and you're focused on your passion. That's a channeling state. So an actor that becomes the character is channeling. A singer that's lost in the song is channeling. It's obviously something that a lot of artists tap into. But again, children do it all the time. People do it all the time when they're focused on something they love to do. But apparently that state can allow you to not only access other portions of your own consciousness from a bigger picture perspective, apparently it's also capable of allowing you to contact or be in touch with other consciousnesses on other dimensions, other levels, other realms. Now, that's not necessarily anything that can be proven at this point. So we never insist that people have to believe that Bashar as an entity actually exists outside of myself. It could be another portion of my own consciousness that I'm tapping into. But really what's important is that from that state, apparently people have the ability to bring through information from a different perspective that seems to have a broader, big picture point of view that sees things in different ways, brings about a different perspective that helps people make constructive changes in their lives in ways they might not have thought to go about it. And the real proof of the pudding, so to speak, is that if the information can be applied in your physical reality and you can get the actual effect you want out of it and it changes your life in a positive way, that's really what the focus of the channeling is all about, is does the information work rather than exactly where is it coming from or is that entity real? That's what we focus on. But essentially, it starts differently for different people. And for me, this actually started really, I've been channeling for 28 years, and it started 38 years ago in terms of what incident triggered this. I actually had two very close broad daylight UFO sightings over LA. First time about 150 feet away, the second time only about 70 feet away, of an equilateral triangular ship about 20 feet on a side, black in color. After having seen something like that, I really needed to investigate what this was all about because, I'd always thought, well, okay, you hear about UFOs, but, do they really impact your life? But when you see something like that physically, you know they're real, and the whole world changes, and suddenly the world is not what you thought. So
The 1970s, right? In the 74?
yes, 73, I
73?
think. Yeah.
And you're talking about like 70 feet in front of you? Like on the ground
Above.
or in the air?
150 feet up in the air and 70 feet up
Broad
in the
daylight?
air. Broad daylight.
Were you alone?
No, I was not, thank God.
How many people were there? What did they say?
The first time I had 4 other people with me, and the second time I had 1 other person with me.
What was that experience
Well,
like?
stunned. We were stunned.
Yeah.
I mean, you're looking at this thing, it's hovering there. You're going, what is this? And you realize it's nothing that we know of. It's nothing that we've been told we have. And again, especially back in the 70s, this was totally unlike anything I'd ever heard of. And we're watching this thing maneuver silently, smooth as glass, moving in unusual ways, and then just disappearing in a blink of an eye. I mean, you're just sort of there with your mouth hanging open.
I mean, I think that, there's a lot of people who say like, well, life other places just can't exist. It's statistically, too small probabilities, whatever. Then you have, new planets being discovered every day.
Sure.
You have our knowledge of the universe is expanding exponentially every year.
Yeah.
And I don't know, but I would say odds are there's got to be something out there.
Well, I think most scientists nowadays would agree that there probably is life somewhere else. I think the debate is whether or not they can get here. Most scientists still, at least as far as the ones you hear on television, still kind of go by the old thought that the distances are too great. We don't know how it can be done, so nobody could do it. Again, that was one of the reasons I asked Bashar about how their ships operate, because as many science programs as there are that speculate now about how extraterrestrials might be able to get here, I have yet to hear the actual description Bashar gave for how the ships actually work. So
what is
I know they have a different way of doing that.
For the young scientists that's at home.
Okay.
How does that work?
This is how Bashar has described what they do, and I'm going to try and really sort of just bring this down to a simple concept. We think of objects as existing in a location. They think of location as one of the properties of the object. So if you look at an object as if it has a vibrational equation signature, it has a frequency that represents that object. One component of that frequency will be the location of that object. What they do is they change the locational frequency component.
I see.
So if you input location B into that equation, the object, be it a ship or whatever it's carrying, has to stop existing at location A and just has to start existing at location B. There's actually no intervening travel at all. They just stop being here and start being there.
Right, which is why you would have people who say they see spaceships and they just disappear.
They just wink out.
But how about the fact that people see lights and stuff and they change and they become other things, and how does that work?
That may entail a whole lot of other kinds of things going on. Some of it may have to do with our perception of things that are happening in a slightly out of dimensional phase to us. There may just be ways we perceive things that aren't, maybe they may not even be literally what's actually happening in the ship. It may just be the way it translates in our reality. I really needed to do a lot of exploring to find out what was behind all that. And I read a lot of books, and one thing kind of led to another over the years. I came across other books on metaphysical subjects, psychic phenomena, ESP, channeling. I was actually introduced eventually to a channel who was conducting seminars, and listened to the entity coming through that channel for several months. And again, this is where I learned that it's really the information that's key, rather than whether that's really a spirit or really an ET or what have you, or just another portion of our own consciousness, because we all have the ability to tap into source. There's nothing special in that sense that the channel has that other people don't. But a channel is doing it. And after listening to that information for a while, I thought it had a lot of value, a lot of merit. But eventually, the entity coming through that channel actually offered to teach a channeling class. And I went to the class not because I thought I was going to be a channel, I just wanted to learn more about it, do more research. But halfway through the class, which was basically a series of guided meditations to put you in touch with, more of yourself, I received what I can only describe as a telepathic connection from Bashar and his people. In that one instant, a memory came back of having made an agreement before this life to do the channeling with him. And in that one instant, I understood that the UFO had been shown to me on purpose to get me to start learning what I needed to learn. And the message that was there was, Now that you know you made this agreement and now you know it's time to begin, is this something you still want to do? Now, at first I thought, okay, I'm hallucinating, I'm imagining this, I don't know what's going on. But at the very second that happened, the entity coming through the channel who was teaching the class stopped talking and turned to me and said, there's somebody here for you if you're ready to begin. Are you ready? So I instantly got a validation that this wasn't just going on in my head. They were picking up on this too. And I thought, okay, you know, I'll practice, I'll see where this goes. I stayed with that class and I was offered the opportunity to channel in the next class, got a lot of practice. Eventually, a woman found me and some other channels who wanted to use us as subjects to study for her doctoral thesis paper on the connection between psychology and channeling. And so I started channeling to her friends in her home. And, you know, one week it was 5 friends, and the next it was 10, and the next it was 20. Word of mouth just spread, recordings were made, they spread all over the world. And one thing led to another, and here I am 28 years later, all by word of mouth, having now channeled all around the world.
When I met you, there were probably 300 people, 200 people maybe in the audience
room,
between that. And a lot of them I know had not seen you before. And it seemed like you were giving some really, you know, again, if I'd walked into that room knowing nothing about the backstory that you just said, I would just say, you know, wow, this guy's a really deep guy and he has some really great insights, you know, and that to me is what matters, you know, and that to me is, I think, what should matter for anyone. It's like where the information comes from is irrelevant. You know, it's the fact that, you know, if you're able to help someone in their life, you know, that's to me the important.
Yeah, as long as the information is positive and self-empowering, not controlling.
The idea of prayer is simply an attitude of gratitude in the present tense. In other words, you are in a state of being grateful for your existence and grateful for what you have. And when I say what you have, what I'm actually saying is every single thing that is truly important for you to manifest in your life already exists. You already have it. You just don't know you have it because you can't see it because you're not in the right frequency to allow it to become visible to you. So prayer is being in the attitude, the energy state of gratitude that you already have what it is you're wishing for, knowing that you have it, knowing it will manifest exactly when it needs to, where it needs to, and thus by being in that energy state, you're aligning with what you might euphemistically call the unconditional support and unconditional love of creation, which is so unconditionally supportive and so unconditionally loving, it will even allow you to believe you are not unconditionally loved. That's how unconditionally loved you are. It'll allow you to decide what's true for you because you are a unique experience and it wants to experience itself through your unique eyes. So being yourself as fully as you can is up to you. And prayer just puts you in the state where you're more aligned with the idea of that unconditional love that allows you to recognize that it's okay to be who you truly are. Prayer is not about asking for something you don't have. Prayer is an attitude of gratitude for what already is, and thus being in alignment with it so it becomes visible to you. There is nothing outside of creation. What you call God is all that is. It is you. It is the chair. It is the room. It is the sky. It is the planet. It is the stars. It is everything. Everything is made of God because there's nothing else to make anything from. So all of you, all of us, everything is what you call God experiencing itself as everything. This is the second law. The one is the all. The all are the one. Does that make sense?
If you could boil down what Bashar, who is the entity that you channel, right? What is the one sentence that boils down that philosophy?
Follow your passion. But the thing of it is you hear that all the time, but the thing I appreciate about the way Bashar delivers it is he doesn't just leave it as a metaphysical aphorism, he explains the physics behind why is it important to follow your passion. How does that work? How do you apply it? How do you get an effect? He leaves people with toolkits that they can use because it's all well and good to hear nice phrases, but if you don't know what really to do with that, if you don't really know how to use that to change your life, it really doesn't do you much good. So he's very good at breaking it down, grounding it, if you will, bringing it down to earth, no pun intended, and giving people something they can walk away with that they can apply day after day and hopefully learn to use well enough that they don't have to go running back to someone like him, that they understand they have the ability to tap into what they need to tap into and create their own lives in the way that they wish to.
What are some practical things that we can do on a day-to-day basis to have our thinking be such that we can be on an optimal path, on the optimal track for ourselves?
Do you understand the whole concept of why it is important to act on your highest excitement every moment? Hesitation usually means no.
No.
All right. That's your answer. You see, you hear in what you call your New Age parlance the idea of following your bliss, acting on your excitement, acting on your highest joy. But why? Why is that important? The reason is the answer to your question. What you actually call excitement, what the body's translation is of that sensation, is it's actually representative of the vibratory frequency of the energy that represents your true natural self. So if you always act on the thing that contains the most excitement at every given moment to the best of your ability with zero expectation as to what the outcome ought to be, you will be walking the optimal path no matter how it looks. You see, the idea is that many of you have been taught to think that, well, I am at A, I want to get to Z, and the straightest path is to go from here to there. Whereas, if you follow your excitement, the path may seem to go like this. But you see, because it's representative of your excitement, because it's representative of your true vibration, you'll actually become superconductive and pass that energy through you very quickly and move on that path much more quickly than a smaller path that's not you, because the smaller path will be representative of resistance. And you'll find yourself pushing against it and going backwards and taking a lot of time to walk that path. Whereas if you go the longer path, but it is representative of your excitement, you'll actually get to Z faster. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
This is simple physics. It's just about aligning with the vibration of who you actually are. And the things that excite you the most excite you the most because they're representative of your true natural frequency. So acting on the things that excite you the most is like following the compass needle that's pointing to your true magnetic north. And if you just keep doing that, you will find that that excitement will become the driving engine and the organizing principle of your life, and will attract to you every single situation you need to continue to act on more and more and more opportunities that bring more excitement. That's actually all you need to do. At any given moment, you have a number of things that are available to you to take action on. It doesn't matter what they are. Just pick the one that has the most excitement, that you have the greatest degree of ability to take action on, and act on it to the best of your ability until you can take it no further with absolutely zero expectation. And if you just keep doing that, you will find that your life will become an ecstatic explosion of synchronicity. Does that answer your question?
It does. Thank you.
Thank you. Remember, this is just simple physics. It's nothing mysterious. It's just physics.
So, what was this journey like for you personally? I mean, was this a hard journey for you to actually, because you work in the film industry?
I do.
And your background is visual effects, right?
That's where I started.
That's where you started, and now you're a filmmaker as a writer, producer, director.
Okay.
But what was that like? Did you ever have that moment where you were like, "Wow, is this gonna like hurt my career? Is this gonna,
Sure.
Is my mom gonna still love me? Or
Sure.
if I do this?"
Because it's certainly not normal, at least especially back then it wasn't, because this is in the early 80s. I mean, now the word channeling is sort of tossed around for any number of reasons, but back then people would, like, huh, channeling? What are you talking about, And yeah, there was always that, am I gonna, people gonna think I'm crazy? But because it helped people, that was really the main focus, and I always got the feedback that this made a difference in people's lives, and that's why I did it. So I didn't really worry about that side of it so much, and I didn't bring it up unless someone gave me an opening to bring it up. It's not something I volunteered. But I actually found out, several years later, that it's not even something I necessarily had to worry about. When I was at work at one of the special effects places, one time somebody noticed, well, I'm going somewhere on a regular basis to do something, and they didn't know where I was going. They go, "Where do you go every Thursday?" And, blah, blah, blah. And I go, "Okay, great, here it comes." I said, "Well, how some people kind of talk about, well, people can go into kind of a meditative, altered state, and, well, when you're in that," and they go, "Oh, you're a channel." I go, "You know about that?" He goes, "Oh yeah, my mother does that all the time." So I mean, it was just like when it sort of broke, it was just kind of like, it wasn't really a big deal. Now, sure, there are people that still, want to have nothing to do with that. But I just found that, if you're in a certain world, you will basically attract whatever you need to in that world to support what you're doing. So it just really didn't become a worry after a while. It just became part of my world, and I attracted people who also have that as part of their world. But I think what I realized is that not only were other people getting something out of this, of course I was getting something out of it, because when you feel that kind of energy coming through, it's balancing you emotionally, it's balancing you mentally, it's balancing you physically. You get to experience things that are very unusual and very exciting. Well, when I'm in the altered state, it feels like I'm in a very deep energetic daydream. And when Bashar comes through, I get to feel what they feel like all the time. And the feelings they have and the perspective they have is, and I'm just going to talk about him as if he is another entity, because that's the way it comes through, so I just honor that. They don't experience one shadow of a doubt about anything for a second. That's a profoundly different state than what humans normally exist in. So over time, that rubs off on you, and it changes the way you go about living your life, and therefore it improved my life as well as apparently improving other people's lives. And so that's where the balance point is. You realize, but I can apply this in my life. I can make my life better. I can go about doing things much more creatively, much more effortlessly, without as much struggle. So why would I want to give that up?
So when you are in the trance state and you're doing this, if I walked up to you and talked to you or said something, are you aware? Is Darryl aware of what's going on, or
no?
Are you coming out of it and going, "Wow, I had no idea"?
I know there's something happening because I'm having the daydream, so I know what that's representative of. But I don't hear the words. It's the same way as if you're having a really deep daydream and somebody walks in the room and they go, "Lance, Lance," and they have to call your name 5 times before you hear them. It's like that. The words are so secondary because that's a translation. I'm receiving the telepathic information in a very different kind of context, and it's just getting translated through my brain into words for everyone else. So I know there's something going on, but I'm not really paying attention to exactly what's
you
happening.
said that somebody actually once hooked you up to like a EEG monitor, and your brain was doing all this like bizarre stuff.
It's actually technically what they discovered is it's technically not a trance state. It's a state of heightened connectivity, heightened activity. They actually saw that there were many, many more connections going on in the brain than are normally happening for a single individual. So they saw it was literally like there was more than one mind thinking. And at the same time, they saw that all the different brainwave levels were all there, but they were all like kicked up several notches, even though they still existed at different levels relative to one another.
So when you're translating this information that you're getting, are you actually hearing something in your head, or are you how is it coming through to you?
I get pictures, images, senses, sensations. Time for me in the channeling state is very collapsed. If I've been doing, like, say, a session for an hour and I come out, if somebody asks me how much time do you think has passed, it feels like maybe 20 minutes, 15 minutes. So I'm getting these collapsed telepathic concepts all at once. And it takes time to get that translated out. Like, for example, one time I wanted to know, like, Bashar presents himself as an extraterrestrial being, and the spaceship that I saw supposedly is his ship. I wanted to understand, well, what's the principle behind these ships? How do you travel from star to star? How does that really work? If I'm not having to translate for someone else, I don't have to go into the altered state. I can just get a direct telepathic download from him. But to show the concentration of information in telepathic download, he answered me in one split second. It took me 3 hours to write it out.
Let's go to one more clip, and let's show a little bit more about what Bashar does, and then we'll come back.
Okay.
I guess what I've been trying to understand since I was little, of course, like everyone, is the purpose of life. And
the purpose of life is to be lived.
No, yeah, I understand. And with all this continuum going on, then I sometimes wonder, why are we, as a soul collective, even in it, if everything is
because it's fun, it's exciting, it's a growth experience.
So
it's a master class in transforming limitation into freedom.
So if it doesn't matter.
You think she even heard that?
I did, but I'm trying to get something else next.
Oh, all right. What is the something else you wish answered?
Well, the thing that I wish answered is basically what is the point then, whether I arrive at a negative level or a positive level. I know the point is my experience, but collectively,
Yes.
What is the purpose anyways? That if you're just playing a game, if you're just going through it, having fun,
To
having
learn,
beer,
to grow, to be more.
in order to get where?
Nowhere. In fact, the purpose is to be more here.
Okay. So it doesn't matter what course.
Doesn't matter how you do it. If there was only one path, there would only be one person.
How did your civilization decide to go to non-physical density?
How did we decide that?
Yes.
I believe we decided it very well, thank you.
Okay, what is the process?
Following your highest excitement every moment that you can to the best of your ability with zero expectation of the outcome. In other words, that allows for pure synchronicity, and thus you get a chance to actually physically experience that this is how reality works. You see, we have often said in many of these dialogues that one of the greatest shocks that your society is going to discover is that what you've always thought of as fairy tales is actually the way life works.
Right.
So when you allow life to work, when you allow creation to work in the way it was designed to work, your life becomes an ecstatic explosion of synchronicity. You always wind up exactly where you need to be, when you need to be there, with whom you need to be there. Not a second before you need to be there, but not a second later either. It's about opening up to perfect timing by being who you truly are. Because if you're not being truly who you actually are, if you're not living in the present by being who you are, then how can anything that is representative of the vibrations of the things you prefer find you if you're not home? But the more you live in the now, the more things can find you. Why? Because now is the only time that exists. So they can't find you then or when. They can only find you when you're in the now.
Do you experience conflict or
No.
war in your society?
No. No, thank you. Simply have no need.
Do you have films in your reality?
No, we just come watch you.
So what I noticed in that clip, it was a Q&A clip, and what I noticed is that he's fast.
Very.
Like, when you're, I mean, it's like, it's like he's the greatest comedian poet, like, on the face of the planet, where he always has a comeback. It's instantaneous. Are you translating comment by comment in your head, or
No,
are you
no,
just
no.
like basically just like you're doing a keto and just redirecting the energy?
Yeah, here's my analogy. Normally, like now, you and I, we're driving our vehicle. We're in the driver's seat. When he comes through, I slip over to the passenger seat and he's driving. So if you're in the passenger seat, you don't have to pay attention to where you're going. You're just going along for the ride. You can look at other things, you can pay attention to other. I can even have other conversations with him. I don't have to know what's going on here at all. That's all being handled by him.
But until you actually see the videotape or someone tells you,
I don't remember
you
what
don't
was
remember
said.
what was said.
I
So
only
it seems like
remember
you're
my
missing out on all the good
experience.
stuff.
No, because I'm getting the concepts sinking into me in the way I need to use them, but I don't remember the words that translated how someone else needed to hear it.
I want to take this now and get back to the real nitty gritty of how what you do can actually help people. I want to go back to this clip. Let's show this clip real quick of the Conscious Life Expo, and we'll be right back.
We would like to begin this transmission by congratulating you all first and foremost for making it to 2012. We know that many of you have been waiting for this particular demarcation for quite some time, and it is generally representative of the crossing of a threshold, or what might be euphemistically called the bow shock, the leading edge of the collective consciousness of your world as it goes through its transformations and transitions at this timing on your planet. In a similar fashion to the idea on your planet, in your technology, as when you create a bow shock, when you go through the sound barrier, the idea of this date in your year of 2012, this winter solstice date of December 21st, represents the crossing of a threshold, the pushing through of a boundary of a bow shock way. So that before that time, even though your world may have been collectively a little bit more negative than positive, after that time, it will finally be, for the first time in a long time, a little bit more collectively positive than negative. Now, this does not mean that just because you have tipped the scales that way, that everything is going to be, as you say in your language, peaches and cream the next day. But the idea is that you'll begin to be able to create a momentum, what you would call a snowball effect. You can build upon that positive energy that you have tipped the scales to create, and you can build and build and build and amplify and magnify that energy from that point forward in the years to come. But it will accelerate, because positive energy is integrative, collective, unifying, and thus, in that sense, accelerative. Whereas, of course, negative energy is segregative, separating, deunifying, deconstructing, and thus then, by unifying yourself, by crossing that threshold, you'll create more of a momentum and make it more available, more capable of being tapped into, more accessible for more people on your planet to tap into the positive vibration and allow themselves to raise their frequencies to be representative of who they truly are more and more every day from that point forward. Doesn't mean you can't do it now. Doesn't mean you haven't been doing it. The idea of this transition has been going on for quite some time, as many of you know, and will continue for quite some time, but it will, as we say, begin to accelerate. So more synchronicity, more of the symptoms of the idea of this transformation will begin to pop up in your lives. Malleability in space and time. The idea of things just popping into your life exactly when they need to be there. The idea of living your dream in that sense instead of just dreaming about being alive. The idea, thus, therefore, is to take advantage of this wave, to ride this wave, ride this crest forward, so that you can allow yourself to be more conscious as a manifester, because manifesting is what you do anyway. You're manifesting your reality right now, obviously, otherwise you would not be experiencing anything. So it's not about learning to manifest, it's about manifesting the idea, the design, the experience, the parallel reality that you prefer to manifest consciously, rather than allowing your reality to be attracted to you by your unconscious beliefs, by your fears, by your doubts, by your hesitations, by your belief in lack of self-worth, which has no place in the idea of a positive frame of reference.
Okay, so the key phrase in that clip was that we are at the pushing through of a shockwave, that before this time you've been a little bit more negative, and now you've been a little bit more positive. You can now begin to create momentum.
Right.
What does Bashar mean by that?
He's looking at the collective energy of our world, the collective signature vibration, which I guess up to this point has been more collectively somewhat negative than positive. And by negative, he means mechanically negative, in the sense of our energy in the past has tended to segregate, separate, disconnect. Now he's talking about it tipping the scales to where it's becoming a little bit more collectively positive, outweighing the negative finally with energy that's more integrative and more expansive in a creative and constructive way. And so when you have things that are integrating, you have more and more energy that's able to be used. You can start accelerating in a positive direction. So he's saying, use that acceleration. It's like riding a wave. It's like a snowball. It's going to pick up momentum. And that energy can now accelerate in a positive direction. So he's urging us to take advantage of it and be aligned with it by making sure that our energy is positive instead of negative, by letting go of fear, letting go of negative beliefs, and really aligning with our passion, our dreams, and creative abilities.
Have you ever heard of a Mandelbrot set?
Yes, I have.
Does Bashar's philosophy fit within that? You know, in that like we are all kind of a microcosm of the whole.
Yes.
And that every little tiny change to the self creates a much bigger effect in the whole.
Well, it does, because from Bashar's perspective, there is actually no such thing as a small change. Every change is actually a total change of everything. But we can use that total change, we can design the total change to make it appear as if it's only a small change. But he's saying that's basically an assumption and an illusion based on how we choose to believe or perceive or define things. But every time you make a change, you're actually changing everything.
Because basically from that perspective, there is no yesterday, there's no tomorrow.
No.
You're starting from ground zero right now,
Every
at
moment.
this moment, at
Every
this moment,
moment,
at this
every
moment,
moment, every moment.
right now.
Yes.
You know, and that to me is such a beautiful concept, because it means all those things that got messed up before, you know, you're starting over, and you can change it.
I mean, and it's not about glossing things over. It's
Right.
not about losing responsibility, but it's about really learning from that and learning how to define what you want this moment to be based on whatever experience you're connecting to and whatever it is you wish to go from there. But Bashar has really said literally, every moment is literally a new moment. Every moment is literally a new reality. And we're literally shifting billions of times per second through parallel realities. In fact, he says that's actually what time is.
The present is not the result of the past.
No.
And the future is not the result of the present.
No.
Please expand, explain.
All things exist now. Do you understand that?
Yes.
Are you sure?
Yes.
Well, then. All right, all right. If all things exist now, then what you call the past and what you call the future and all of its variations in both directions also all exist at the same time. Look at it as probabilities, yes?
Yes.
Nothing is chiseled in stone, as you humans say. It's probabilities. But they all exist. You will experience what you're the energy of. But looking at it from a linear perspective, because we know that when you create a linear experience, you create a connected continuity to other realities that simultaneously coexist, that you call the past and that you call the future for convenience sake. But they all exist right now. But the point is that even when you create that linear connection, whatever you choose to be in the present, that's a completely different person from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. So when you redesign and redefine yourself as a completely different person in the present, that means that in order to actually have become that person, you had to have a different past. So the present actually changes the past. Does that make sense?
Absolutely.
When you define who you are, right now, every moment, you make new connections to other simultaneous realities that you call the past and the future. But you do that every single time you change, every single moment. So you're never the same person, literally, and you never have the same past. You only think you do. And when you stop creating that sense of continuity, or you design the continuity or focus the continuity connections to serve you in the way you prefer, then you will realize that you can take what we call the 13th step. And when you truly define who you are, then it's not about the fact that you've changed and you no longer do that. You never did. Do you understand? That was a different person. That is a different person. So let's say, for example, someone experiences what you call an addictive habit. If they truly, truly, truly allow themselves to fully understand that they become a new person in each moment, then they will understand that the person they are now never had the habit. That's why there's no urge. You can see this clearly demonstrated physically in your reality in cases that your doctors call multiple personality disorder. There are documented cases on your planet of one personality having a cancerous tumor, but as soon as they shift to the next personality, they don't. There are documented cases of one personality having allergic reactions and another personality not. There are even cases of one personality having one color eye and another a different color eye. They are literally different people, literally. And so are you, from moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment to moment. When you really know that, then you will know that at every moment you are at ground zero. Whatever past you want is what you get. Whatever future you want is what you get. With that person you are being right now.
It's like a strip of film. You know,
Yes.
that each new strip of film, when you play them all together, it looks like there's motion. But
Right.
in reality, you're looking at each
But
individual
every
piece.
frame is static, has no motion in it, and it only is because that film is moving in front of a projector light that we get the illusion of motion. So he's saying every parallel reality is like a static frame. There is no motion in it. The only way we experience change and time and movement in space is because the projector light, which is our consciousness, is actually shining through billions of those frames per second, creating the experience we call space-time motion change.
So, what's the best way to surf that energy?
Well, what I said about the idea of aligning with energies that are representative of your passion, because basically that's what Bashar is saying. When you feel excited about something, when you feel that something contains passion, the reason to act on it is because passion and excitement is your physical body's translation of the vibrational energy that actually represents who you really are, what your true core vibration is. And so acting on that thing is like aligning with the compass needle that points to your true magnetic north. And any other deviation from that is going to actually create more effort, more struggle, more strife.
I mean, I think probably crack cocaine is I can be really passionate about that. But
Difference between anxiety and
Right.
excitement. You have to be really honest about what it is that you're doing and why you're doing it. Because many people, if they're in denial, will attempt to define anxiety and fear as excitement because they don't want to look at that thing. So you have to be really honest about the difference between the two.
what are the best tools to get that honest? Because a lot of people spend their whole lives and they're
Yes.
never able to take that kind of look.
Well, according to Bashar, it's really, first of all, of course, a willingness to discover what it is that's creating that anxiety and that fear within you. And from Bashar's perspective, every single emotion you have can only exist because you have a definition or a belief that exists first that you believe to be true. You can't have a feeling, from his perspective, without having a belief first, without defining something to be true. So if you have a certain feeling, like fear or anxiety, he's basically saying if you're willing to discover what's causing that, all you really need to do is ask yourself a simple question and start some honest investigation within yourself, which is, what would I have to believe is true about myself in relation to this situation in order to feel this way? And if you're willing to discover what those beliefs are, once you identify it, any belief that's truly out of alignment with your true positive self will appear to be illogical and nonsensical because it doesn't actually belong to you. You probably picked it up from your parents, your friends, your society growing up. And since it belongs to someone else, it will not feel right once you identify it. And once you realize it's illogical and doesn't belong to you, you'll automatically drop it.
I think it's a psychological concept of once you understand why you have fear,
Right.
then you can beat the fear.
Well, yeah, you transform it.
Right.
I mean, you use it in a positive way. I mean, fear, in a sense, is your friend because fear is a messenger knocking on your door saying, hey, you have a belief that's out of alignment with your true self. That's why you're feeling your energy this way.
I think fear is basically just not being able to accept your own power.
Yes.
Not being able to accept that, like, okay, I don't have to be a victim.
It's resistance to your natural self.
Right. This is something that Bashar said, you must simply remember in everything that we discuss that your outer physical reality is not outer, it is inner. It is just a reflection of you at any given moment, individually and collectively.
Yeah, he often likens physical reality literally to a glass mirror. So he's basically saying if you want to see a change in your outer reality, you really have to change yourself first because it is just a reflection. And it would be in a sense kind of silly in the same way that if you look at your reflection in a mirror and you see the reflection frowning, well, you don't go over to the mirror and try to make the reflection smile. The only way that reflection is going to smile is if you smile first. But people often wait for the physical reflection to change before they're willing to change, and it never works because you can't wait for the reflection to change before you do. It just doesn't work that way.
Let's go to one more clip.
And remember, again, there is no just one world. You are constantly shifting to different parallel realities. So whatever vibrational state you choose to be in is going to ultimately be the parallel Earth you will experience. If you keep focusing on the idea of those who are trying to control and focusing on the ideas of fear, that will be the kind of world you will experience. But at the very same time, the people that focus on the idea of self-empowerment will ultimately, at the same time, experience another parallel Earth where no such people exist.
The clip that we just showed was talking about the fact that we really can, not only can we create our own universe, but we are our own universe.
Yes.
And this show is called Waking Universe. It's about basically, my concept for this show is basically creating something that shows people that they have the control of their lives, and there's many, many different beliefs that say that, and that was something that I noticed there being in the audience that day. It's hard for some people to accept that basically, look, there ain't nobody else in the room but you.
Right.
And that's why I begin this show with hi, I'm another version of you.
Yes.
Which is the ancient Mayan saying of,
Right.
There was an ancient greeting. How does that concept affect you personally? I mean, like, like when you first realized that concept, was it through this communication, and
Yes.
what did that do to your life?
Yes. Well, like I said, it made it a lot simpler, a lot more enjoyable, a lot more creative, a lot less effort was involved. Things just became much more synchronistic. Things started to work automatically because they do already work. So it's really more a matter of allowing things to work rather than trying to make them work.
But how do you define the difference between saying, okay, well, in that case, I am my own universe, and so therefore everybody else is just a figment of my imagination, and I'll just sit in this chair for the rest of my life?
Well, it's this and that, not this or that.
Explain that.
Well, most people on this planet have kind of an exclusive mentality, and it's really got to be an inclusive mentality. All perspectives are true. And so the idea is that, yes, you are your own universe. That doesn't mean other people aren't real. It's just that you have to create your version of them out of your own energy in your own universe in order to know you're interacting with someone else. In a sense, therefore, everyone is having that same perspective. Everyone is their own universe, and they have to, by agreement, by a collective agreement, create interactions.
We've all
with each
agreed
other.
that pigs can't fly, so therefore pigs can't fly.
But
right?
in some realities, they probably can.
But if I'm like, if I'm so convinced that pigs can fly,
Yes.
then pigs can fly.
in your reality.
But is my reality at the
It may
local
not be-
hospital?
well, but see, that's the thing. I think in some cases, people that we call crazy are simply seeing another reality that's not the mass consensus reality. It doesn't mean necessarily, not in all cases, it doesn't mean necessarily that what they're seeing is not just as real
To them.
to them. And it may actually be just as real as anything is to you, but it may not be that they're sharing the mass consensus reality. And so we shut that out. We say they're crazy.
Before you say anything else, I
Yeah.
want to go to one more clip because this
Sure.
applies to that.
Well, isn't everybody in this room experiencing the same reality at this time?
No, that's the point that you're missing. They're not. You are experiencing similar realities by agreement, but they're actually not the same.
So is there people in this room that don't have any clue and won't be affected at all by the FEMA camps, the 78 million
Correct.
coffins that our government
Correct.
has already ordered
There are
for
those that
American
will be
citizens?
affected by it because they choose to live in fear. There are those that will never see it because they don't. It's that literal.
Can you share with us if the population of the planet is going to be significantly reduced?
Which planet? Which Earth?
This current reality. this
You're
current-
missing the point. You are shifting from parallel reality to parallel reality billions of times per second. Decide what reality you prefer. Some Earths will be depopulated, some won't. Any variation of this idea that you can imagine is real. Shift to the one you prefer. They're all real. Shift to the one you prefer. Period. You understand? They're all real.
Yes
Shift
and
to the
no.
one you prefer.
Yes and no. I understand what you're saying.
No,
about
you obviously don't.
reality creation. I wish I knew how to shift to a world where
You are
was my
shifting.
glory.
You are always shifting. The way you shift to the world you prefer with the energy you prefer is to be that energy yourself first and stop buying into the ideas of fear.
But I try and look at reality of the world around me and interpret it.
You are forgetting what we talked about in the sense that every single thing is fundamentally neutral and has no built-in meaning. It doesn't matter how it looks. Remember, the measure of the fact that you have changed is not based on whether the outside changes. It's based on whether your response to the outside changes, regardless if it looks the same. That's how you know you will not be affected by anything you don't prefer to be affected by. Because that's the energy state you've created, and it doesn't matter how it looks, and it doesn't matter what anyone else's intention is toward you. You cannot be affected by someone's intention until you believe you can be or choose to be.
So are there people in this reality right now that just looking back to the past were not affected and didn't have a negative result from all the actions that have been taken so far?
Yes. Wrap your mind around it.
This clip that we just showed is this guy struck me in the audience. He came up, he's got this wild hair, and he says, what about the FEMA camps? What about chemtrails? What about this and the other thing? And I thought the answer was so awesome. Was, well, if that's true to you, then it's true to you.
Sure.
You know, it's not true to you or you, but it's true to you.
That's what they'll experience.
And that's and I find that really interesting, even from a psychological perspective, because if I think somebody's out to get me, well, pretty soon somebody's going to be out to get me because that's the way I'm acting.
Sure.
You know, and I think that
that's what you're setting up.
Yeah, that's what you're setting that up. And so it applies on so many different levels.
Does.
But what's interesting to me though is how do you shift? And I know you've said this before. Is that the you know, notice the difference as much as you can. You know, to shift from one version of reality to another. What's the best way to do that? Like, how do you notice that?
Well, first of all, the first step is to realize we're always shifting.
Right.
It's not something you have to learn to do. It's recognizing that you're doing it, and then understanding consciously and intentionally that there is a particular reality you would prefer to shift to. And since we're shifting all the time, the only reason we don't notice that we're shifting all the time is because the realities we keep choosing to shift to are so similar that it just seems like tiny little changes are taking place over long periods of time, when in fact we're shifting to whole realities. Once we know that and we start allowing the reality we shift to be different enough from the reality we shifted from, we'll notice that we're shifting all the time because the difference makes us notice it. But it's when the difference isn't so great, we just don't notice. So it's really taking, in a sense, a larger shift in the sense of making that reality look different, so different you can't deny that you've shifted to another reality.
But how are you defining what different is? Because I can say like, well, tomorrow I want the sky to be green, you know, but it's not going to.
It needs to be relevant to what truly actually excites you. So the idea is that what really is germane for your life is highly, highly creatable. There are things that are simply not relevant to the reality stream you've chosen, and so while they're not impossible, they're highly improbable. You have to know the difference between what's relevant to the path of your excitement and what is simply fantasy for you.
Right, because fantasy then becomes ego. And if I read my Bible or my you know, whatever, any great master's teaching, it's that as soon as you start operating from your ego, then you're basically, again, a victim and you can't control any of that.
Right.
You know, you're not making this stuff up when you talk about parallel realities. No. This is something that, you know, scientists have been talking about on a very mainstream level in quantum physics. You know, they already know that this exists, that, you know, they can look at a particle that can go either this way or this way, and depending upon where they're looking, it'll go that way.
Right.
You know, and all you're doing is saying that concept applies to your entire life, not just in that reality.
Not just on the quantum level.
Right. And so what were you ahead of the curve on this stuff? I mean, they haven't been talking about quantum physics on a mainstream level for a long time, and I know that you've been saying this stuff since the 80s.
Bashar has been saying this stuff, and so certainly he's ahead of the curve, and he's had conversations with physicists. They've come away very happy. I don't remember what they talked about, but I know that he's able to address and has been addressing many of these concepts way before they became let's say, public knowledge. Some of these things, of course, have been being discussed in scientific circles for many, many years, but I haven't been privy to it. But a lot of this stuff has come out through Bashar, and that's kind of how I was brought, you know, to my attention was brought to it. And again, now many of the things that Bashar has been talking about are being borne out in some of the discoveries that science is making. And
then going back all the way to like something like the Tibetan Book of the Dead, you know, which I happened to open a copy of it the other day, and I was reading about how the bodhisattvas that are here, you know, in that religion to help enlighten the rest of us, you know, that their primary purpose was to get it to the point to where they could completely control their own universe, basically.
Consciously.
You know, consciously be able to control their own version of reality. You know, and back 5,000 years ago, or whenever that book was written, it sounds like they're talking about exactly what you're talking about today.
Well, truth is truth in that sense. It's been around forever, and it's really just about getting rid of all the clutter and looking at the core.
Were you a student of this before?
No.
Before Bashar?
No.
So how does that make you feel when you say something and then you go, oh, wow, I can look that up, and then it's
nice that more and more people understand this stuff now. Certainly, then that I'm not so isolated in that sense. There are more and more people who get these things, more and more people who speak this way and understand these concepts. It's becoming part of our everyday lives.
With that, let's one more clip, and then I want to talk about 2012.
Okay.
Now, because this is a time of change, a time of acceleration, a time of transformation, and a time also of what we have termed the splitting prism. The idea that 2012 is acting as a prism to take certain ideas and now truly start to break them into different frequencies that represent different realities, truly, literally, different parallel realities. It's important for you to be the vibration you truly prefer to be so that you can follow that path, that particular reality line, that particular frequency, that particular train track, if you will, as it leaves the station. And by being on the train that you prefer to be on, you will then experience the things you prefer to experience. Whereas, you will find that as these tracks split up, you will then likely in the years to come be less and less and less capable of actually going from one train, one track to another. They will become more solid, more concrete as the specific vibrations that represent the different parallel realities that you are all creating for yourselves to experience. And remember, you're shifting to parallel realities all the time. In fact, that's what time is. The thing you call time, the experience you call time, is actually your consciousness shifting from parallel reality to parallel reality billions of times per second. If you didn't shift, you would have no experience of movement, no experience of change, no experience of time. Because each parallel reality is just a frozen frame. There is no motion in any one parallel reality. What you're experiencing is a shift through a series of parallel realities in the same way that your film strip running through the projector creates the illusion of motion on the screen. The idea is that your consciousness, as the projector light runs through the frames of frozen, frame-like parallel realities, creating your experience of movement, your experience of change, your experience of time. So the idea, again, is to understand that you don't have to learn how to shift. It's automatic. It's built in. That's what you do. It's about being conscious about what you are shifting to, where you are shifting to, what parallel reality you prefer, and allowing yourself to shift to the parallel reality that is reflective of the vibration you choose to be.
2012.
Is it that time already?
It's that time of, so how does all of these concepts apply now to this day now that we're in, this present, this reality?
Well, it's some of what we were talking about before in terms of we're crossing a threshold.
And talking about a threshold, maybe we should talk a little bit about the fact that everything is frequency.
Yes, it's all resonance. It's all frequency of energy. One thing is a different thing from another because it is a different frequency. And so it's all about the fact that we're raising our vibrations. We're raising our frequencies, at least those that are willing to integrate more of their being into conscious realization.
The particular piece of music that is the appropriate vibration to allow you to be in the proper state to attract whatever information or whatever situations or whatever people or whatever opportunities you require, dealing with the ideas of health issues and also dealing with the issues of letting go, forgiving the self, letting go of regret, letting go of grief, letting go of all those things that allow you to lower your vibration in that way, to forgive yourself, to free yourself, to be more whole. The specific piece of music is the first 3 minutes of Beethoven's Symphony No. 7, Movement 2. Play that while you're in a peaceful state of repose. Let it wash through you. Those chords are exactly, precisely what will tap into the idea of letting go of the past, letting go of sorrow, letting go of grief, letting go of regrets, and forgiving yourself and moving toward the vibration that will attract to you whatever information is germane to allow you to be in the healthy state that is your birthright.
By raising our frequencies, we're creating kind of a leading edge of a wave.
And by raising our frequencies, it's about not being in your ego, it's following your passion.
Letting go of fear. all the things that lower our frequencies.
So fear
let go.
equals negative, bad frequency.
Well, I wouldn't say no, this is not a judgment
Okay,
call.
right.
It's negative in the sense that it's disconnective, segregative. And when things are segregative, you don't have as much to draw on. So when you work with positive energy, it's more integrative, and therefore you're bringing things together in an exponentially expanding sort of way, and you have more to call on, and it's more effortless.
They've done studies where they tried to get 7,000 people to meditate on lowering the crime rate in Seattle.
Right.
And it went down like dramatically for 30 days.
Exactly.
You know, and that so you're saying that collective thought energy
Yes.
shifted all of us out of that
into
heavy crime rate reality into the lesser crime rate reality.
into another reality that is reflective of the vibrational state those people took themselves to.
So like when someone prays for somebody, you know, then
Yeah.
they are basically putting that thought out there.
Yeah, and let me make that distinction, because I think that's an important distinction that Bashar talks about a lot. You're not actually changing the world you're in.
Right.
You're shifting to another reality that's more reflective of the vibrational state you've changed to.
Right. So if I'm angry, bitter, scared all the time, I'm putting myself into a world with a lot of angry, bitter, scared
You'll get
people
a lot
around
of that reflection.
Right. And that's why, like, when I'm in a good mood, it seems like stuff just kind of bounces off.
Exactly.
And maybe that person that was mad showed up an hour before I got there and left,
Sure.
and I never had to talk to them.
Right, but the thing to also realize that's important is it's not about judging whether you've changed based on the outer reflection. If you respond differently to the outer reflection, even if it stays the same, then you know you've changed. Then the outer reality knows you've changed, and then it can reflect the change.
Right, and that actually brings me to another point, which is that a lot of people think like, okay, well, all of this that we're talking about shifting everything is just about all of a sudden everything is going to just be blissful and perfect, and there you go. But
It might be for some people.
It might be, but it seems to me that this is also about how you deal with
Yes.
those challenges.
Exactly.
You know?
You're never going to not have challenges. You
Right.
always want challenges. They help you grow. So it's really about learning how to stay in a positive state and come from that positive state no matter what challenges arise, because any challenge can serve double duty. You can get a negative experience out of it, you can get a positive experience out of it, but what you put into it is what determines what you get out of it. This is what Bashar says is simple physics. What you put out is what you get back. So
Right.
neutralizing everything and not giving it an automatic negative definition gives you the opportunity to actually extract a positive effect in your life, even if you can objectively recognize that someone may be using negative ideas.
Right.
It doesn't have to affect you negatively if you remain in a positive relationship to that, even if you're able to see it.
Getting back to the ancient Mayans, and they're saying about, hi, I'm another version of you. I feel like anytime you can go into a conversation, even if somebody's coming at you with negativity, and you can say, okay, you know what? You know, you're just another thought in my head that is not having a good day, and I understand that. That changes the tone of the whole conversation.
It does. And it can actually shift you both into a whole new reality where the outcome is completely different and completely unexpected.
And I could be having the same conversation with a psychologist, you know, who would say, well, you know, if you change your attitude, of course the other person's attitude is going to change too, because there's a different psychological effect on that person.
Yeah, I mean, and again, it doesn't really much matter what terminology is
Right.
used. The effect is the same in all of those cases, and so you're really going for that effect. However you frame it, however you define it, however you describe it, is just different ways that people have of relating to those things.
December 21st, 2012, what's going to happen?
It will probably be another day.
That's good, because that's your reality. That means you're holding it all together. That's good.
I mean, again, it's whatever people really want it to mean, but I think since there's so much collective energy behind the idea that it does represent a transformational threshold.
And for the people at home, we're talking about this December 21st, 2012 is the end date of the Mayan calendar. You know,
Yes.
there's a movie called 2012 that said, oh, world's going to end, you know, huge apocalypse,
Right.
whatever.
It's the ending of
you
a
know.
cycle, but it's the beginning of another cycle.
Right.
And I think the idea is that there is a lot of energy behind it. So I think people are going to experience certain things, but mostly I think it's about the idea of crossing into a reality that is going to be more representative of what we prefer. And it doesn't mean everything is going to be peaches and cream the next day, but it is going to be able to be more accessible. That energy will be able to be accelerated. It really is what we make of it. And it's really about sort of getting it in your mind what it is you really do prefer and starting to act like that and starting to live that
So
way.
if the thing that confuses me is the difference between a collective energy and an individual energy. Because if we're saying, okay, you know, you're your own universe.
Yes.
So everything is basically bouncing off of you, you know, or me, or whoever's watching this at home. You know, so, you know, can that person somehow abdicate their authority here somehow.
I'm not going to say it's impossible, but I would probably guess that the only way someone could thoroughly abdicate their vote or participation is to not be here. So they would either have to die or shift to a completely different reality where no one perceives them anymore, because then they're no longer participating with that consensus reality.
Why is the planet shifting at this time?
I think we've sort of reached the end of a cycle of experiencing all forms of different limitation that we can experience in this reality. We're kind of waking up from our sleep. We're realizing, we're remembering that we create our reality, and we're kind of waking up out of that dream into another dream where now we realize we are creating this reality. We are creating this dream. Let's live this dream consciously instead of living it unconsciously as we've been doing for thousands of years.
Again, I think it just goes down to simple common sense that you can either be a victim of your world, or you can start taking responsibility for your world. You can start saying, hey, if I throw this plastic bottle in the trash and don't recycle it, eventually I'm going to have an island the size of Texas in the Pacific.
Yeah.
You're contributing based on
and
where
it's
your
being
thoughts start.
connected. It's knowing that you are connected
Right.
and seeing the whole thing as a whole system instead of the victim perspective, which is that you're an isolated individual with absolutely no connection to everything, and everything happens to you instead of things happening through you.
Right. I think that's a very good analogy. The difference between to you and through you.
Yeah.
Karma is simply an idea of balancing that which you wish to balance, that which you recognize requires balance for your own preference, for your own growth. It's not a punishment, it's not imposed upon you, it's self-imposed. It's a recognition of balance that you prefer.
It seems to me like you're helping a lot of people with what you do. Looking at it from the perspective of, okay, Bashar, let's say he's an ET. Let's say this isn't your collective unconscious, as would be said. Let's say this is. What is their race of people about? Like, what do you? Because the thing I noticed is there's a lot of stuff in the media that's negative about ETs.
Sure.
So like, are these? Are they planning a takeover here? I mean, is this something going to happen?
I highly doubt it. I think they could have done that a long time ago if that was really their plan. Really, from Bashar's perspective, delivering information this way to us and letting us decide whether or not we want to apply this information and making changes with this information is one of the ways that they begin to initiate first contact with another civilization. Because they're allowing us to listen to their philosophy and their point of view, and they're allowing us to decide whether it's true for us or not. They're not forcing us to buy into it, but they're watching to see whether or not we do adapt it, and if we adapt it and change sufficiently so that we can become more compatible with them, then contact can take place. So that's definitely one component of why he's doing this, is to help bring about the idea of contact between our civilizations, which not only would be expansive for us, but expansive for them. The other side of the coin is that they do actually consider us, in a sense, to be extended family. And so because we've put an invitation out that we want to expand our consciousness, in a sense, they've answered that call. And they're giving us information that helps us do that, because they realize that whatever benefits one benefits the all.
In other words, it's your planet. You have to decide that it's all right for us to interact with you. We're not going to force ourselves on you.
How do we maintain focus?
You don't maintain focus. You find the focus comes naturally when you do what you love to do, don't you?
I can, but I feel that there's so many other people that are out there.
You are the only one you need to think about. Because then you will be a shining example to others of what they could also choose, but don't have to. And it is by that barometer that we will determine where contact and when contact takes place. Understand something very important. I'll put it to you this way. In one way, shape, or form, the reason we are interacting here this way, this day of your time, is that in one way, shape, or form, every single one of the beings in this room have experienced contact. You just don't remember it. The rate at which you remember contact has already happened allows us to use that rate as a barometer for when you are more ready for contact. Openly. Surprise.
I think that a lot of different civilizations have been aware of us and participated in various ways with our journey for a long time. But like I said, that's a whole other subject we could talk about for hours.
Yeah, and it's now you have shows like Ancient Aliens, which
Sure.
are really great for just asking these questions.
Sure.
You know, and again, I think it is about asking questions. It's not necessarily about believing all of the
Sure.
answers. You know, because you know, and I love your philosophy of, you know, you take what is true to you and you discard the rest. I mean,
Yeah.
if it works for you, then use it.
Right, and
You know?
tomorrow something else may work for you,
Right.
so it'll change.
You say that the energy of this place is shifting. You know, that it, not the studio, but the planet. Does that
sure.
make it easier for you to carry around that energy that you're working
Yes.
with all of the time?
Yes, it does. Anytime more and more people operate on that kind of a frequency, it makes it much easier for other people to also choose to operate into that frequency. It's like creating an atmosphere of that energy. Sure.
So it's not as much work.
It's not as much work.
I have another question I'm just curious about. Are there any other channelers or people that you follow, that you're fans of?
Well, certainly the Seth material from Jane Roberts was a big factor in terms of when I started studying material on channeling. I think there are several good channels. I'm not going to name names, but I think there are several.
You were in Tuning In, the documentary with a lot of them.
Yes. Yes.
I have another question for you. And I got to know, just because I'm a sci-fi geek, and I want to know. You work in special effects. Has your experience channeling trickled its way down into your effects work? You've worked on Star Trek.
Yes.
And you know, how does that work?
Well, in some ways it certainly does, because my energy has changed and it affects other things that I do. But one very specific way in which it came into the effects world is the first job I actually worked on was an old TV series called Project UFO that was put out by Jack Webb. And it was kind of like the Project Blue Book version of Dragnet, where you have two Air Force officers going around investigating UFO sightings and reports, and just, you know, what are the facts, ma'am? What are the facts? And we would recreate the UFO sightings that the people said that they saw by building miniatures of all the different UFOs, and they would photograph them. Well, sometimes they would actually come to us and say, you know, do you guys, you know, have any stories, or do you want to interject? And so I said, well, you know, I did have this sighting, and this, oh, great, what did it look like? And I described it and said, why don't you build that, and we'll put it in one of the shows.
That's great.
And we did. So I built the triangular ship
Can
as a
we find
miniature.
the show on YouTube? Is it there?
I don't know if you can find
What's
them.
it called?
It's called Project UFO.
Project UFO.
By Jack Webb. I don't even know what episode it was. I would have to look it up. All the different episodes I worked on are actually in my resume on IMDb, so it might be in there somewhere. But I got to actually show in the show what I saw, so that was fun.
That's great.
Yeah.
That's great. What about designing like propulsion systems and stuff? Are you like, you know?
Yeah, I mean, I'm using my own creativity. I'm tapping into whatever, you know. So I don't always necessarily know where the lines are drawn and you know what's mostly me and mostly other, you know, levels. It just all sort of becomes one thing because it's a creative act. So
yeah.
I draw on it all the time, but I can't necessarily pinpoint, it's like, well, this came from me and this came from him, or, you know, whatever. It just all blends together.
With that, let's look at another clip of Bashar.
Oh, okay.
Remember that the physical mind is not capable of knowing how something's going to happen. So any plans that the physical mind makes need to be simply very rudimentary, very sketchy, the merest outline. Because the idea is that the physical mind is simply not designed to know how things are actually going to happen. The physical mind is only designed to know how things are happening, to experience what's going on right now. Only the higher mind knows how things are actually going to happen, or how they could happen. So the physical mind can put out a little bit of a sketchy plan, a little bit of an idea that seems logical to it, can even have a visualization of that desired reality. But you must understand that the purpose of those plans, the purpose of that outline, the purpose of that visualization is not for those plans or the visualization to come to fruition exactly as the physical mind has seen it. The purpose of that visualization of those plans is to generate the proper state of being that is representative of that reality. Then hand that state of being over to the higher mind and let it bring you the way in which that reality or something similar will actually come to you that will be representative of the state of being symbolized by the plan or the visualization. You see, what to the physical mind may seem to be the ultimate reality, the highest thing it can imagine, to the higher mind is just the beginning. Just the floor, not the ceiling. The higher mind is capable of imagining and bringing at you things far greater than the physical mind can imagine. So don't straitjacket it with your plans. I will only accept your beneficence if it comes in this little box. I will accept nothing bigger, nothing greater. So there. Higher mind says, okay. So, make them simple, make them sketchy, make them for the purpose of generating the energy that is represented by that state, and then let the higher mind do its job and actually bring you the reality that is actually representative of that energy state, and through synchronicity lead you on the steps necessary for full manifestation in whatever way it comes. This is why the formula that we always say for the first time is act on your highest excitement to the best of your ability, taking it as far as you can possibly take it, with zero expectation of the outcome. We bid you all exciting, creative, loving. Good day.
What can we end this with? Again, trying times, people are having a hard time. What can they
I think
take
the
out of what
biggest
we do?
thing I've learned is that if you truly, truly understand that how important it is to act on your passion, it is capable of supporting you. And to really let go of those beliefs and those definitions and those fears that say you can't do it, it can't be done, and everyone knows it doesn't work that way. You really need to listen to your own drummer. You really need to follow your own, your own path. But when you do, when you're true to yourself, the universe will support that just as strongly as it supports anything else you decide to do. And it really does work when you apply it.
Darryl, it has been a real pleasure speaking with you.
Pleasure for me as well, thank you.
And how do people get a hold of you? How do they find out more about you?
They can go to the website for Bashar information, which is www.bashar.org, B-A-S-H-A-R. All the background on the channeling is there. They can access CDs and DVDs of dozens of recordings that Bashar has made over the years and find out anything they need to know there.
I really hope that we get to see you back on the show again sometime soon.
I would love to.
And again, thank you for coming out.
My pleasure.
It's been a real pleasure.
Thanks, Lance.
And we'll end with another clip from Bashar. Thank you.
Have I really met you, or was that just a dream?
Did we not say you've all already had contact?
Yes, you did.
Sometimes the memory comes out as a dream. You understand? So the rate at which you remember in all ways will determine the rate at which you are ready for more conscious contact. All right?
Okay.
Pleasant dreams.